This episode of NSCTV is brought to you by Leonora SSAA, the Bushranger in Order, Geelong Firearm Courses, Hunters and Shooters Society of Australia, Ballarat Arms Military Collectors Society, the Combined Firearms Council of South Australia, Auto Scratch, and a Coolside Outdoor Store. Welcome to another episode of NSCTV, and thank you to your patient supporters and our sponsors for making this possible. In this episode, we give you an update from the Northern Territory on the story of Ron Steri. He's the shooter who lost his licence after helping a neighbour who had been stabbed. We also give you an update from Western Australia on the curious relationship that the SSAA has with the Australian Labor Party. If you're a member of the SSAA, you'll be furious at what you're about to hear. So stay with us. Okay, I've got Peter Zabradak with me again. How you doing, Pete?
Evening, Neil. How are we going, viewers?
Tonight we're going to give a bit of a quick recap on the story about Ron Steri from the Northern Territory, where things are at. He's the guy who had his guns taken off him after he went to help a stabbed neighbour. The Northern Territory Police then decided to give him a bit of a marathon hard time by taking his guns off him, making him go to the foreign, well, basically to fight to get his guns back, which we supported him right through. They then raided his place, and when he was actually interstate, and then they come up with a new argument that because he had won his previous case, there was a leftover issue to do with a bayonet charge, which caused them to again cancel his license. And they actually, you might recall, they raided his place. They didn't find anything. They came up with the idea
the famous chili sauce.
They found a whole lot of suspicious chemicals, including water and vinegar and a few other things, which really the local media did a good job of picking up on that and running with it as well. Yeah. Ron has been fighting this matter with our support now for quite a long time. And just a quick recap on where that's at. It's currently going through conciliation. A compulsory conciliation hearing, which will be happening around the time this video comes out. But what is more interesting is the fact that Ron has actually initiated civil proceedings as well. And what has been filed is this document, which I'm going to show you, which is the claim. So what has been filed is this claim in the Northern Territory courts, and you can see here that there's a series of claims for $21,000 for trespass on the land, which was his house, $19,000 for trespass that led to that happened before the search warrant came in. There was a further claim of $18,000 on the basis that the search warrant was not executed in a reasonable manner. $22,000 for trespass on the basis that police remained on the premises significantly longer than necessary. $16,000 for trespass to goods that the police unlawfully seized. $11,000 for trespass to goods that police unlawfully disconnected Ron's CCTV system when they found it. $1,000 for the firearm safe, which readers might recall the police drilled holes into when they tried to break into it.
Yep.
Further damages for firearm storage, aggravated damages in sum of $28,000 for the embarrassment, humiliation, everything else that went with this whole episode. And that's a total of $137,000 with Ron's costs, which we've been helping with. Also to be determined. So there's nearly $140,000 worth of claim there in Northern Territory, which is, as I said, is actually now running in parallel to the fight to get Ron's license back.
Yep, and we've been supporting Ron thanks to the generosity of our members and supporters. And
the Ron fight obviously is not over. We still got to fight this other matter to get his license, and if people want to contribute to that fight, they can do that quite easily at our website, just go to nationalshooting.org.au. The address will be on the bottom, and hit the donate button, and you'll find the area for donating to Ron's fight. Do you run a business that supports the shooting industry? Take out a gold, silver or bronze sponsorship with the NSC to get your logo on our videos. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Western Australia, which we've been given a lot of coverage over the last few weeks because there's been a lot to talk about. It's the leading state at the moment when it comes to, I guess, and it's really more serious than perhaps than this, but when it comes to the fights that we're facing, a lot of the problems that we're having in Western Australia are not only problems with Western Australian shooters, but they are significant problems potentially for the rest of the nation. So we've really talked about the mystery forum, which SSAA convened. I think that was in Western Australia. And Pete, you want to talk a bit more about the outcome of that?
There's quite a bit to cover actually regarding WA, but I'll start off by talking about the forum. Naturally, the NSC were not invited, but there is almost a roll call of shooting organisations that were not invited. Shooters Union, second largest shooters organisation in the country, obviously weren't invited, and I believe that they had put in a number of requests in writing to actually attend, and were just totally ignored. So it leaves me very, very sceptical as to the motivation and the intent of the primary organisers of that event. But I dare say it will play out in due course and time will tell. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking. The gun bans and ammunition bans take effect as of July, if I recall correctly. So very, very much a case of the clock is ticking in WA. So let's hope that the new body can actually do something positive, even though the NSC have been snubbed, as have other leading shooters organisations. Big announcement today over there was that SSAA Western Australia, of course, have formally come on board with the new shooting organisation. My greatest fear is, as we've seen happen before in the past, that SSAA will just try and stand over all of the other representatives and say, well, we're the biggest, so we should be calling the shots. Well, again, time will tell.
Yeah, what really concerns me is the forum, when it was advertised, there were no objectives stated. The feedback that we've been getting out of Western Australia is there's no objectives that seem to have actually come out of it. No action plan. And as you said, there is a short-term fight and there's also a long-term fight. And long-term fight, obviously, is to get rid of, at least for Parlia, and the kind of attitude and approach that's happening. And so they are the two outputs that really I'd like to have thought were focused on, regardless of whether or not we were involved. The other bit of feedback I'm getting is that there was apparently basically the commitment or the statement was that we are not going to get political. That was apparently addressed. So if they're not going to get political, what the heck are they going to do?
Very, very interesting that only certain politicians in WA were invited. Rick Mazza, the former Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Member of Parliament, was there, but you can count the number of politicians that were invited on one hand. So again, it seems to have been very much a selective attendance list, and no surprises there. But I'll talk a little bit more about that with what else we know about WA and what's going on. So,
okay. You can support the NSC's legal actions by becoming a donor at nationalshooting.org.au. So moving forward, Pete, your next.
Okay, so the NSC has been leading the charge on revelations, I guess. We were the ones that revealed, for example, that the WA Police's armoured Bearcats were in fact resistant to 50 cal BMG, despite the claims that were made by Wapol and Papalia, the minister. We then had the big revelation with the FOI documentation and how that all played out, and the response to that has been phenomenal. Last time I looked, that episode of NSCTV had somewhere around 8,000 views. So pretty huge response. I think most people have seen it or are certainly aware of it. And then we were very, very fortunate in that we were able to interview David Letizia, the bunker man, and actually get the real story from him. And as we all know, it was quite different to the story that Papalia and the mainstream media portrayed in WA. So there's been a series of revelations, I guess, and we'll continue with that theme tonight. And I can actually drop another major revelation. This one involves our friends at the SSAA, and it's a revelation that they probably won't like coming out, but it is what it is. So, according to their own mantra, the SSAA always likes to state that they are working behind the scenes and working behind the scenes diligently. We can now reveal just how far that working behind the scenes has actually been going on. So I'll go straight into it if I can. So what we can reveal tonight is that SSAA Western Australia have engaged the services of a professional lobbyist and also a policy and PR, I guess, public relations and strategy advisor. And that particular lobbyist, funnily enough, his company is called Council Communications, and the lobbyist's name is Simon Bailey. Now, Simon actually has a very, very interesting background. He's actually linked to the Labor Party very, very strongly. He was formerly the senior media advisor to Alan Carpenter, former Labor Premier, and worked for the Carpenter government. So that in itself is very, very telling, and I'll go a little bit further into that. Lobbying when political staffers leave the job, I guess, or leave their duties in Parliament House or working for a party, and they become a lobbyist, it's a very, very lucrative business. There's a lot of money to be made, and you're basically paid according to what doors you can open and what connections you have to keep people in political parties and or governments. So I think it's quite telling that Mr. Bailey and his company, Council Communications, have got a link going back long term to the Labor Party, and I'm sure that that's something that the SSAA would not want revealed. Yeah. There's a number of questions that need to be answered. How long has this relationship been going on for? How much money has been paid? And I dare say that the money paid to Council Communications has come out of members' funds. So it all ties in with the approach that we've seen from our friends at SSAA in Western Australia and the crowing about they were the only ones that had a seat at the table several months ago and a direct line to government and police. And it all makes perfect sense now because they thought that they had a lobbyist who ensured that they would have a seat at the table in that relationship with the government. So,
I mean, it's not unreasonable to want to use the services of somebody who has been through the political process. I mean, you've been there yourself. It's not unusual, I guess, to try to hire people who might have the right connections, but you expect them to do a job that's actually representing your interests. And there's a real danger here that maybe there's some other priorities at work. And I think that's sort of where you're going. That really, the SSAA hasn't actually kicked any goals. And there's
exactly. I think the biggest, I suppose, expression of what's gone on is that Paul Fitzgerald, the SSAA president, came out publicly and said that shooters of WA have been, and I quote his words, blindsided by the announcements from the government. It wasn't the shooters of WA that were blindsided so much as obviously the SSAA themselves and their leadership and hierarchy were totally blindsided. So the way that they have treated the SSAA's leadership team, and that is Papalia in the government, despite them employing the services of a very expensive lobbyist, actually shows it's actually quite telling. I mean, yes, lobbying is quite common. I came across lobbyists in my time in Canberra on a regular basis. And as I said, a lot of political staffers do leave, but continue on in careers in lobbyists, particularly with the Labor Party, because it is very, very lucrative.
Let's meet Mr. Bailey. I've got a video, which is on his Facebook page, so I'm sure members would like to know who this chap is. So I'm going to show you and the world as to where your money is going. Now, bear in mind, this is not a statement or criticism or anything of his lifestyle, but I saw this video and I thought it was rather humorous and worth playing. So let's play it. Okay, so now, but on a more serious note, and as I said, hey, look, everybody, each to his own. If you have a look through, I guess some of the social media presence, I have found 3 things here which I'll show you, and this is all from his Facebook page and the Facebook page of his company. And the first is sharing. There's one tweet that he shared for Daniel Andrews. Now, it's actually one of 2 that he shared, but that's okay. We'll keep going. The second one that I've got is a forum attended by a WA Minister, Ben White. Now, it's not unreasonable for a communication specialist to hang around government forums and to report on that. But it's just interesting that everything is posted up as being about Labor.
Well, as I
zero about anybody else.
As I explained, Neil, from my own personal experience in Canberra and within the Labor Party, if you want the access to those people and the doors to be allowed to remain open to you, it's a case of keeping your party membership. And as I said, if necessary, even progressing donations towards the party for its own good. So as I said, the whole lobbyist thing, whilst it is legal, it can become very, very murky. Now, what particularly I get, I guess, a little bit frustrated and a little bit angry about this is that there are certain people inside SSAA Western Australia that have actually made a lot of noise publicly, targeting myself and focusing on my connections to the Labor Party. Now, just to set the record straight, and I'll take this opportunity to do that, and I appreciate that, I have not been a member of the Labor Party since the NSC has been formed. Daniel Andrews here in Victoria actually had me excommunicated from the party because of the stance that I've taken as far as the shooting sports go. And I have no direct connection to the Labor Party anymore. So for those that want to point the finger at myself in WA and say Peter's connected to Labor, perhaps they should be looking at their own backyard and who they're paying.
Okay. Pretty clear. Won't stop them, though.
No, I'm sure. The other thing I will comment on that is there's been and it started last weekend, there's been a fairly strong smear campaign of innuendos and lies targeting the NSC on various social media sites. I just wonder whether there's a connection there with Mr. Bailey, because that tactic is quite well known within the Labor Party. It's called running a shit sheet on your opposition. And in fact, I was taught the black arts of running shit sheets on political enemies by the Grand Master in Victoria of the Labor Party on how to do it. So I don't think it's a coincidence that lies, innuendo and smear have been targeted towards the NSC and myself, and in fact even involving a member of my family, which I find particularly disgraceful and disgusting. And for the record, I'll clarify this publicly here. Anyone with half a brain can Google my surname and find that my son is a lawyer. but my son has no connection to the NSC, never has had a connection to the NSC, does not do or has never done any work for the NSC, and has never received a cent from the NSC in any way, shape or form.
Just I think one final note, if I can, on the forum. It was attended by some of the other shooting organisations who were invited, who probably don't really get involved in politics, don't really know any better. As I said, there really was nothing that came out of it as far as I know. I think my advice to those shooting organisations is unless you can see a clear direction, or you're going to be doing pandering to other people's aspirations, you're really better off getting information, I think, from the likes of us, so you can actually see what's happening without those interests at play, because there's quite a lot of number of small organisations around Australia, and certainly Western Australia. There's small bore, there's pistol groups, shotgun, collectors, vintages, they're all around. So if you're tied with one of those, do treat it with a lot of suspicion and look after your own interests.
Absolutely, and it's a very valid point. And whilst the NSC has no love for shooters, fishers and farmers, and at the last WA state election, we said do not vote shooters, fishers and farmers. We cannot recommend them. Our reasoning for that was SFFP's relationship with the Labor Party. And I think subsequent events since then have proven that. There has been the attitude and things done by Borman here in Victoria. And then, of course, we've had Labor preferencing SFFP in New South Wales last week at their election. And, of course, there's a video that's emerged of Robert Borsak, the leader of the SFFP, which has come up on our site, where he's instructing people how to make sure that Labor candidates get elected. As you correctly said, be very sceptical and wary, because it is political, absolutely 100% political. And as I said, the actions of who was invited, who was there, now the links to the Labor lobbyist and the money going to him, as I said, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it's very, very murky.
Just to reinforce the point about what you said about Robert Borsak and emphasising, we basically made statements about helping Labor. There's some certain by-elections. The video is too long to play here, but there'll be a link to that video in the description to this video.
Correct, and it is up on the NSC supporters page, Facebook page. It's quite interesting. Yeah. Well worth watching to see what Borsak actually says. I don't think that he expected that video to surface and to be made public, but it has. Mm. Okay, so I think the most important message to anyone that's a member of SSAA Western Australia is quite clearly they should be asking questions about where their membership money has gone, and was it value for money? And quite obviously, it doesn't appear to be the case, because, as I said, having a lobbyist and an advisor linked to the Labor Party hasn't exactly worked out the way that the SSAA leadership team perhaps would have hoped.
Labor's gone right where they want them.
Exactly, but I'm certain that they've kept this very, very quiet and wouldn't like it to come out, because it is what it is. So, time for the NSC to reveal.
Okay, Peter, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, viewers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of NSCTV, which highlights the dangerous relationship that SSAA Western Australia has with the Australian Labor Party in Western Australia, and also the dangerous relationship that the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party also has with Labor around Australia, and why it's causing so much grief for shooters. We'll see you later.